BRRR, it's so cold, isn't it? That's probably the most common phrase heard behind the scenes of BTS's tour preparations this week. But the 10 degrees Celsius temperature at Stanford Stadium or the piercing winds of below 4 degrees at Pier 17 in New York City can't freeze the warmth of the 7 friends who have just reunited after nearly 4 years separated by military service and solo careers. Amidst the thick fog that shrouded today's practice session, lucky fans watching from afar shared short clips that instantly melted hearts. Jungkook, the usually energetic young bunny, was seen shivering violently. Jimin immediately embraced him. And that was just the beginning. Let's rewind a bit. On May 16th, 17, and 19, Stanford Stadium will be rocking. Tickets will sell out in minutes. Thousands of armies from around the world will flock to the venue, carrying their light sticks, ready to sing their hearts out. But before the big stage lights up, there are small stories that are the most precious. That day's practice session was shrouded in fog. The air was humid, the temperature touching 50 degrees Fahrenheit, about 10 degrees Celsius. Not too extreme for an average person, but for 7 men who hadn't experienced intensive outdoor training together in years, it was a challenge. Jungkook was wearing a thick jacket, a scarf wrapped around his neck, and a hat covering his freshly cut hair. But still, the cold was penetrating. His lips trembled slightly as he tried to focus on the new choreography for Swim from the recently released Shivering album. Next to him, Taehyung was no less cold. His tall frame was shivering uncontrollably. Without warning, without pause, Jimin stepped forward quickly. His arms immediately wrapped around Taehyung's shoulders, pulling his best friend into a warm embrace. "What's wrong? Aren't you wearing enough clothes?" Jimin muttered softly, though the microphone couldn't pick it up, but the movement of his lips was clearly visible. Taehyung just smiled slightly, burying his face in Jimin's shoulder for a moment. The moment went viral within hours. But it wasn't just Jimin and Taehyung who caught the attention. Jungkook, wrapped in a thick blanket like a cocoon, paced between practice sessions. The blanket moved playfully with his steps. One time, he stood next to Namjoon, who was holding crutches, whether due to a minor injury or just a prank prop, and then, without asking, Jungkook grabbed them. He began limping, imitating a grandfather with a cute, baby-like lisp. "I have 2 crutches," he said with a chuckle. Namjoon, initially dumbfounded, burst into laughter, then quickly grabbed Jungkook's stomach and tickled him. Jungkook squirmed, the crutches nearly falling, and their laughter broke the chill of the practice session. The other members, watching, immediately joined in. J-Hope shouted from a distance, "Those are accessories for the old Creator Crew sketch. Kook." Suga just shook his head with a faint smile, muttering, "That kid never changes." Moving on to a different location. A few days earlier, BTS had gathered at Pier 17 in NYC's Seaport District. The Spotify x BTS Swimside event was a grand affair, attended only by fans selected as top streamers. The temperature that night was even harsher, below 40 degrees Fahrenheit, about 4 degrees Celsius. A strong wind blew in from the ocean, making even thick clothing feel thin. But BTS remained professional. They performed songs from their album Shivering, the upbeat Swim, the intimate Normal, and several reworked versions of older songs. The live performance, despite the bone-chilling cold, was incredible. Their voices didn't waver in the slightest. However, the most memorable moment came during the Q&A session. Jungkook, standing at the very edge of the stage, suddenly hugged V from behind. Taehyung was taken aback for a moment, then smiled broadly, allowing himself to be warmed by his younger brother's embrace. Jimin, who had been busy checking on his teammates, immediately approached and made sure Jungkook's scarf wasn't loose. RM, also known as Namjoon, stood in the center, wearing a thick vest and gloves. His voice echoed through the microphone. "We haven't been together like this in almost 4 years. Solo work, military service, distance, but look at us now." He pointed to the New York skyline sparkling in the cool breeze. "This view feels even more beautiful because we're seeing it together again." Fans in attendance were moved to tears, not just by the song, but by the miracle of the reunion unfolding before their eyes. Behind the scenes of Arirang's North American promotions, there was a clip that made ARMY laugh out loud and feel incredibly excited. The members were sitting in a circle, watching old footage from their early debut days. Suddenly, a photo of Jungkook from the past appeared. His round, cute face, messy hair, and one detail that J-Hope immediately noticed, an old Canon bag always slung over his shoulder. "Oh my gosh, look at that," J-Hope exclaimed, clutching his chest. "It's so cute, I swear." Suga squinted, analyzing the approximate year the footage was taken. "I think it was around 2015, huh?" His face was still so baby-faced. Jin, who had been grinning all along, suddenly joined in. Back then, he wouldn't let go of that bag. He carried it everywhere. Then Jimin, with a serious face but nostalgic eyes, said, "I was the one who told him to give up that old habit. Remember? I bought him a new bag to replace his beloved Canon. I said, 'Come on, Kook, it's time to move on.'" He chuckled. He protested for a week, but eventually gave in. Jungkook, sitting in the corner, smiled shyly as he chewed gum. "My Canon bag," he said softly, and everyone laughed. It's moments like these that set BTS apart. Not just because of their world-famous songs or super synchronized dancing, but because of their genuine brotherhood. The cold is just a backdrop. What matters is the warmth they create together. And then, amidst all the clips and video clips circulating, there's one lesson we can learn. BTS never grew big alone. They grew big because they took care of each other. Jimin's swift embrace of Taehyung, Jungkook's warming of V, the blanket brought from nowhere, the reunion laughter in the NYC breeze, and even the memory of the Canon bag. All of these are pieces of the puzzle of one big picture: family. And the upcoming concert at Stanford Stadium isn't just about singing songs. It's about celebrating that after the storm of military service, after the distance, after the bitter cold, they're still here, together, intact. So, to all the armies who will be there on May 16th, 17th, and 19th, get ready. Bring a thick jacket, bring tissues, and brace yourselves. Because BTS will be giving it their all, as always. But behind the grand stage, the thousands of lights and the booming sound, remember these small moments, the warm hugs in the cold, the laughter that chills the air, and the 7 men who choose to be together, no matter what. They're cold, yes, but their hearts are burning warm. And that's where the real magic lies. And for Jungkook, after practice, he's covered in 3 jackets, 2 blankets, and a mug of hot chocolate from Jin. Jimin made sure he ate some warm soup. Taehyung lent him his spare gloves. Namjoon shook his head with a smile, then snapped a photo of the moment to post. Who knows when, depending on his mood. Because that's what BTS is. Not just a group, but 7 brothers who felt the same cold and chose to warm each other. See you at Stanford Stadium, ARMY. Bring your hugs, too.